قبل البدء أود التنويه بتوافر الترجمة الفورية. يرجى مسح رمز الاستجابة السريعة. تتوفر السماعات عند المدخل. Please note that there will be simultaneous translation. Make sure to scan the QR code. The headsets are available at the entrance. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدنا أن نرحب بكم جميعاً في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، أرض الإلهام والإبداع، وفي مكتبة محمد بن راشد، منارة المعرفة والثقافة التي انطلقت منذ عام 2022 لتكون معلماً يروي قصة شغف الإنسان بالكتاب والفكر والحضارة. يسعدني أن أرافقكم أنا علياء المنصوري، منتجة ومقدمة برامج تلفزيونية وإذاعية. نلتقي اليوم في قمة دبي الدولية للمكتبات والنشر تحت شعار مستقبل صناعة النشر، لنبحر معاً في عوالم المعرفة والإبداع من مدينة دبي المزدهرة، ولنسهم في كتابة فصل جديد في مسيرة المكتبات والنشر العربي والعالمي، بمشاركة أكثر من 80 متحدثاً من 20 دولة حول العالم، وعبر برنامج ثري يضم 45 حلقة نقاش و16 ورشة عمل تفاعلية. بداية ندعوكم لمشاهدة فيديو قصير نستعرض من خلاله إنجازات الدورة الأولى ونضيء على أبرز محاور الدورة الثانية من قمة دبي الدولية للمكتبات والنشر. أترككم مع الفيديو.
منذ أن ولدت الكتابة بدأت رحلة الإنسان مع المعرفة. وفي العالم بأكمله تحولت الكتابة إلى هوية وحضارة. أما في دولة الإمارات فالكلمة صارت مشروعاً للمستقبل، يجمع بين أصالة التراث وقوة الإبداع. وفي الدورة الثانية لقمة دبي الدولية للمكتبات والنشر نتطلع لمستقبل أفضل لصناعة النشر، بمشاركة أكثر من 80 متحدثاً من 20 دولة من حول العالم، و48 جلسة حوارية، وأكثر من 20 ورشة عمل.
I think it's really powerful to have a library with such a strong global vocation that's looking not only to support the development of the field in the UAE and Dubai.
هالنوع من المؤتمرات جدا مهمة، ولأول مرة أنا جدا سعيدة يعني أن هالنوع من المؤتمرات يكون يقام في دولة الإمارات.
هي فرصة مهمة جدا للتعرف على أشخاص آخرين في نفس المجال، مجال البحوث، مجال المكتبات، مجال الأرشفة.
نرحب بكم من جديد، واسمحوا لي الآن أن أدعو معالي محمد أحمد المر رئيس مجلس إدارة مؤسسة محمد بن راشد آل مكتوم لإلقاء الكلمة الافتتاحية، فليتفضل مشكوراً.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني أن أرحب بكم جميعاً في مكتبة محمد بن راشد في الدورة الثانية من قمة دبي الدولية للمكتبات والنشر، الذي يقام هذا العام تحت شعار مستقبل صناعة النشر، تأكيداً على المكانة الرائدة التي تتمتع بها دبي كمركز عالمي للثقافة والمعرفة وصناعة النشر. نجتمع اليوم والعالم يتعرض لتحولات متسارعة يشهدها قطاع النشر محلياً وعالمياً، ولنتشارك الرؤى حول كيفية الارتقاء بصناعة المعرفة وسوق النشر لترسم ملامح مستقبل أكثر شمولاً واستدامة وتأثيراً في حياة الأفراد والمجتمعات. هذا السوق العالمي الذي بلغ حجمه نحو 151 مليار دولار في عام 2024، ومن المتوقع أن يرتفع إلى 192 مليار دولار بحلول عام 2030، بينما يواصل قطاع النشر الرقمي توسعه من 230 مليار دولار إلى 448 مليار دولار خلال الفترة ذاتها، في دلالة واضحة على التحول الرقمي المتسارع وأهمية الابتكار التكنولوجي في تطوير صناعة المحتوى. وانسجاماً مع هذا التحول العالمي، فقد تبنت دولة الإمارات نهجاً استباقياً لمواكبة تطورات قطاع النشر، وسارت بخطى واثقة نحو تعزيز مكانتها على خريطة النشر الإقليمي والعالمي، حيث يتوقع أن يرتفع حجم سوق النشر المحلي من 250 مليون دولار إلى نحو 650 مليون دولار بحلول عام 2030، تأكيداً على التزامنا الراسخ بالاستثمار في الإنسان وترسيخ صناعة المعرفة كأحد ركائز اقتصادنا المستقبلي. الحضور الكريم، لقد أدركت دولة الإمارات منذ تأسيسها أن الاستثمار في الإنسان هو الاستثمار الحقيقي في المستقبل، وأن الثقافة والمعرفة هما عماد التنمية المستدامة. ومن هذا المنطلق جاءت مكتبة محمد بن راشد لتكون منصة فكرية تجمع صناع المحتوى والمبدعين والناشرين من مختلف أنحاء العالم في حوار حضاري يعزز التفاهم ويعمق التواصل بين الثقافات، ويدعم تطوير البنية التحتية لصناعة النشر والمكتبات في المنطقة والعالم، من خلال قمة دبي الدولية للمكتبات والنشر التي تسلط الضوء على أحدث التوجهات العالمية في النشر والمكتبات، بما في ذلك الذكاء الاصطناعي والتحول الرقمي والنشر المستدام، إلى جانب دور الترجمة في بناء جسور التواصل بين الشعوب، كما تدعم تمكين الجيل الجديد من الكتاب والمحررين والمترجمين وتزويدهم بالأدوات والمعارف التي تواكب التحولات الكبرى في صناعة المحتوى. حضورنا الكريم، إننا نؤمن بأن مستقبل النشر يعتمد على التعاون والتكامل بين المؤسسات الثقافية والتعليمية والإبداعية، وهذه القمة تمثل خطوة جديدة نحو تحقيق هذا التكامل من خلال النقاشات والمبادرات التي ستسهم في بناء مستقبل أكثر إشراقاً للثقافة العربية والعالمية على حد سواء. أرحب بكم جميعاً في هذا اللقاء الثقافي العالمي، متمنياً أن تكون هذه الدورة حافلة بالأفكار الملهمة والتجارب الرائدة، وأن تسهم في صياغة مستقبل أفضل لصناعة النشر والمكتبات بحيث تواكب المتغيرات العالمية المتسارعة. شكرا لكم، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
نشكر معالي محمد المر على هذه الكلمة التي قدمت نظرة مهمة حول التحولات المتسارعة التي يشهدها قطاع النشر محلياً وعالمياً، ودور قمة دبي الدولية للمكتبات والنشر في مواكبة هذه التطورات. الحضور الكريم، يسرنا الآن دعوة معالي عمر سلطان العلماء وزير دولة للذكاء الاصطناعي والاقتصاد الرقمي وتطبيقات العمل عن بعد، مدير عام مكتب رئاسة مجلس الوزراء، لإلقاء كلمته، فليتفضل مشكوراً.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة الحضور الكريم، يسرني حقيقة ويسعدني أن أكون معكم اليوم في هذه القمة المهمة والملهمة لدولة الإمارات ولدول المشاركة. تم يمكن طلبوا مني المنظمين أن أتكلم باللغة الإنجليزية، فإذا تسمحوا لي بحول باللغة الإنجليزية للمشاركين من خارج دولة الإمارات. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure being with all of you here today in this inspiring and important summit, a summit dedicated to the knowledge that is going to shape the future of the United Arab Emirates and every single country participating in this event. I'd like to start off by taking you back a few hundred years, taking you back to a point of time where humanity reached a pivotal inflection point, a point where knowledge was no longer dedicated to a specific location or to a specific mind. With the advent of the printing press in the year 1455, humanity reached a point where knowledge could be democratized, it could be distributed, and it could cover the world over. It was a point that was revolutionary, and with it created many more revolutions. The Industrial Revolution that we've lived through, whether it's the first that our great-grandparents lived through, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, which we currently are a part of, can all attribute the start of the first spark of them to the printing press in the year 1455. Many people talk about the revolutions in the past that had the same gravity and the same importance and the same impact as the printing press. Some talk about the discovery of fire. Others discuss the advent of the electrical age or the computer age. But many agree in our current time that there is a new revolution that has the potential to create the same impact or beyond. And this new revolution is one that isn't coming, but one that we are living through right here, right now. And it is one, and I tend to typically worry about making blanket statements, but it is one that has transformed each and every single life in this room and beyond. And that is the age of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence today is the tool that many of us use to answer any and every question that we have, whether it's the new systems from large language models to the old systems like the typical search on Google. It's also the tool that we use to access content on platforms like YouTube and Netflix and others. And it's the tool that we use to navigate from point to point. There are very few people today that cannot attribute a quality of life improvement in their lives to anything other than artificial intelligence. With that, there are transformations that we are going to see. We've seen a lot of transformations over the last decade. I think the biggest transformations are going to come in the next decade. And those transformations are going to be transformations of access. Access that individuals have that is going to reshape societies as we know them. The fact that each and every single one of us, at their fingertips, has access to all of humanity's knowledge through large language models that can answer any question, that can today, with the new agent revolution with artificial intelligence, actually go and complete tasks for you, means that what is to come is going to be a productivity revolution. What is to come is going to be an era where countries the size of the UAE, with populations the size of the UAE, can match and hopefully outclass countries that are much bigger and have a much bigger population or much deeper history. This brings with it certain key changes. It also brings with it certain key challenges. The changes are that publishing no longer depends on the old school system that we've been through for all of these decades in the past. We are able to today publish content using artificial intelligence in much faster intervals and get them published across the internet without having to go through the traditional process of printing and publishing that we were used to in the past. It doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong, but these capabilities will open new avenues. We're able to publish content in new media genres. It went from publishing as books and then getting that animated and getting that filmed to today being able to animate, film, and publish with one single prompt. These capabilities will ensure that certain cultures and certain people that were misrepresented in the past because of the ecosystem and the infrastructure that existed in their countries compared to other places are going to be more represented. And that the capabilities are going to be today driven by those who are the users of this technology, who are the societies that embrace it and use it wholeheartedly. In the UAE, we believe that every single tool has challenges and opportunities. The challenges are clear. We're living in an era of disinformation, misinformation, and deepfakes. The challenges are also that these systems hallucinate, and some of the information isn't accurate. And there are challenges related to what happens when you give access to such powerful tools to each and every single person. It will allow people to create certain things that might be devastating for society. However, we don't sit on our lapels in the UAE and decide that tomorrow is going to be a gloomy day. We don't forecast the future by looking through the rear view mirror. We drive ahead having a clear vision that if we empower our society in the right way, we will be able to ensure that the results are positive. That's why in the UAE, His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Crown Prince of Dubai, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense, launched an audacious and ambitious project last year to train 1 million people how to become super users of artificial intelligence. The segment of society wasn't defined, and this was purposely done so. His Highness did not say that we're going to train 1 million government officials, or we're going to train 1 million kids, or 1 million retirees, or 1 million people from the people of determination. He said that we're going to cut across all segments of society to ensure that society as a whole can be empowered by the use of this technology. We are currently on track to hit the 1 million target by 2027. Many of these initiatives have one key focus. For a country of 10 million people, if we want to have the impact of countries that have a population size of 100 million and beyond, we can only do this if each and every single person can produce 10 times as much as countries that are in our neighborhood and in the rest of the world. AI is going to be the key magnifier for the coming generation. The key magnifier for those who publish content, the key magnifier for those who consume it, and the key magnifier for those who want to ensure that their impact goes beyond themselves, their neighborhood, and their country. I believe that conferences and summits such as this one are integral. We are going through a shift that isn't going to mean that the traditional is going to disappear, but it's going to be augmented. And a shift that requires that dialogues happen between those who are creating the disruption and those who are currently in that key sector. I also believe that artificial intelligence today poses a lot of questions for us. Questions on ethics, questions on what do we do if we have access to these capabilities, and questions of what is right and what is wrong. And the answers to these questions can only be found if there is dialogue, if there is a brainstorming that is open, that is global rather than local, and if we are able to work as a team to ensure that this revolution serves everyone. I wish you great success in this event and hope that the proceedings of this summit can be used to shape the future of publishing and libraries globally. Thank you.
نشكر معالي عمر سلطان العلماء على كلمته الملهمة التي ربطت بين الذكاء الاصطناعي وصناعة النشر، مؤكداً على أهمية الابتكار والتكنولوجيا في تطوير المحتوى والمعرفة. وفي ظل هذه الرؤى يسعدنا الإعلان عن انطلاق فعاليات الدورة الثانية من قمة دبي الدولية للمكتبات والنشر، والتي ستنقلنا إلى جلسات وحوارات نوعية تجمع بين الفكر والإبداع وتستشرف ملامح المستقبل الذي نصنعه بالكلمة والمعرفة. ونبدأ فعاليات اليوم الأول بكلمة الرئيسية حول النظرية الأدبية للروبوتات، يقدمها الأستاذ دينيس إي تنن، أستاذ مشارك في اللغة الإنجليزية والأدب المقارن بجامعة كولومبيا، فليتفضل.
All right. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Today, I have a tall order, and I want to convince you, I want to change your mind a little bit about artificial intelligence. And I want to convince you, when you hear the words artificial intelligence, that you see behind those words not just a history of technology, but also a history of letters and publishing and literature. And really one way for me to begin that process of rescue is to reclaim the words. Artificial involves artifice, and intelligence involves intellect. So those two words, artifice and intellect, I'd like you to start thinking about those two words. Friends, how's the clicker working?
Green one is for the forward,
Mm-hmm.
the red one is for...
Okay. All right, well, they're figuring this out.
Yes.
Now, my dictionary and my bookshelf and my library and my colleagues and my students, I become not very intelligent at all. In other words, my natural intelligence is actually not that great. And if I reflect on the practice of modern intelligence, whether it's writing or technology, engineering, building cities, building bridges, all of that intellectual cognitive activity doesn't happen really in this model. If you think about it, the words artificial intelligence, they imply the obverse of artificial, that is natural intelligence. And what I'm trying to say is that natural intelligence is rarely found. If you reflect on your own daily cognitive activity, we're almost never kind of think by ourselves, just inside of our heads. Biological intelligence is rare in contemporary world, but really in humans are defined by not being alone in their thinking. And if you can imagine a child who is born without proper socialization, without proper technological augmentation, as the minister said, of our intellectual capacities, that is quite a large handicap. So natural intelligence is actually, it's rarely found and it's not desirable whatsoever. And that really means that all intelligence is artificial in some ways, and all higher level intellectual capacities, they involve artifice. It is the defining feature of human intelligence, in fact. Now, the fancy way of saying about 10 years ago when AI popped, ChatGPT came out, and all of us, it was in the news, all of us heard it for the first time, and really it was claimed in a strong way by the technological community. And as a historian of technology, as a historian of literature, I knew that things don't work like that. History proceeds through influence by others. So my question was, what are the precursors of the contemporary AI moment, the ChatGPT, the kind of tools that we all use? And so I set out to fill in the blank timeline and to start thinking about a long history of artificial intelligence. Now, I wrote a book about it. I have many, many examples of that history, but let me give you two case studies from that history. Now, one of my favorite case studies from that history is the work of Ibn Khaldun, and my apologies, I will probably mispronounce the names. I don't speak Arabic, but he wrote a really influential book in 1377. Really, the book was a work of his lifetime. It was a book of world history, and the introduction, or the mukaddima to that book, contains several pages, I would say at least 5 pages, describing a medieval practice of divination. And he speaks quite a bit on divination practices worldwide and in the region. He himself was born in Tunis and wrote in Cairo. And so he speaks about practices of divination, and among those practices of divination, he mentions the Zairaja divination circles. So let me read from Ibn Khaldun directly. Khaldun writes, "The Zairaja is a remarkable technical procedure." This is 1377. "Many distinguished people have shown great interest in using it for supernatural information, with the help of the well-known enigmatic operation that goes with it. For that purpose, they have been desirous to solve its riddle and uncover its secret. From the form of Zairaja, they use a large circle that encloses other concentric circles for the spheres, the elements, the created things, the spiritualia, as well as other types of beings and sciences. Each circle is divided into sections, the areas of which represent the signs of the zodiac, or the elements or other things. The lines dividing each section run to the center, and so on." Now, this circle with other concentric circles, he goes on to describe in detail the technical procedure, and he describes what I would consider one of the first chatbots, one of the first conversations with one of these circles, where the input is a verse from the Quran, and the output is a divination about, it's a conversation, it's a prompt and response. And then he concludes by saying, this may be a profound technology, this may be indeed the future of letters, or it may be a party trick, I don't know. And he leaves the possibility open that this may be a way to produce new knowledge about the world, but he's not yet sure. Incidentally, for us historians, it gives us this great documentation of an early technological kind of call and response way of generating text, of inputting some information and getting back information that you haven't encountered before. Now, the Zairaja circles were incredibly influential across the Al-Andalus Caliphate, and specifically they were very influential in the work of Ramon Lully in Latin, or Uy, if you want to be kind of appropriately Spanish. Ramon Uy took this extant tradition of Zairaja circles and really attempted to create a science, a combinatorial science, used not just for divination, but used for logic and philosophy. And here you can really see the kind of circles that Ibn Khaldun was describing. Now, some of these, you can imagine the outer circles being actually movable. So you can imagine a mechanism where it's pinned in the center, and by moving around the circles, you are producing all possible combinations of the words. Now, usually these were divine texts, and usually these were sort of like properties, divine properties or properties of God, And so, for example, maybe you already know some properties of God, but some properties, some divine properties you haven't encountered yet. And these kind of circles help you explore the space of rhetorical possibilities. Here are some names and kind of powers, divine powers, that by rotating the circles, you can produce a number of statements that you know that are true. Now, these systems become popular all across Europe through the Spanish influence, and they become quite crucial for the work of Leibniz, this small unknown philosopher, Leibniz and his calculus, and really they lie in the foundations of Western thought, and specifically Western logical thought. So there's a lot to be said about Lullian combinatorial influence, the influence of Ibn Khaldun, and the influence of this practice of using the divination practice of using Zairaja circles, its influence on the birth of Western logic. We also have, by the way, incidentally, a bunch of poets, for example, German Baroque poets, who use these, who create systems like this, and then use them to create poetry, or use them to create plays, or use them for education, for example, was another use for these circles. Now, I'm not actually a historian of that period. I'm sure there are medievalists here who know this history much better. I am really a historian of 20th century and 21st century of technology, and I want to reiterate something that the minister highlighted through the history of the book, of the printing press. But really, one thing in his talk that really I took note of is this notion of kind of an industrial revolution or an information revolution, but in letters. So what happens? You know the story, all of you know the story well, of what happens in the Industrial Revolution in the making of goods. So for example, the story I told you early on about artisanal labor, the making of clothes. So you can imagine in the 18th century or 19th century, somewhere there's a tailor in their workshop, in his workshop, making like one t-shirt, whatever, not t-shirt, one shirt per hour, or one shirt per day, for example, right? Or the making of any kind of industrial tools. It's slow, it's artisanal, it happens by solo practitioners. We know this story. We know the story of the Industrial Revolution when it comes to physical goods. And I submit to you that the production of intellectual goods, that initial picture of the world that I drew you today, the initial picture of cognition that I suggested to you early on, it holds true for the production of intellectual goods as well. Intellectual goods such as writing, such as books, such as theater, plays, technical manuals, and indeed conspiracy theories and disinformation and so on. So one thing I'm trying to describe in my work is a history of intellectual goods, the history of writing, the history of letters, that's no longer just populated by individual authors. It's not just a history of Shakespeare and then Dickens and then even Ibn Khaldun and then Lowell. That's normally how we think of history, but a history of technological procedure in the way Ibn Khaldun describes it for us. So what does that history look like? What do we put on this timeline? Let me tell you another story, and this is now original. I'll highlight a little bit of my original research. At the end of the 19th century, no, I should say in the middle of the 19th century, a prolific writer writes about a dozen novels or so in their lifetime. So you think of Dickens, you think of Dostoevsky, you think of Tolstoy. A dozen is very, very prolific. So, think 1850, a dozen means it's a work of a lifetime. Now, by 50 years later, in one of those revolutionary moments that the minister described for us, the average writer in the United States wrote a dozen novels per year. So something happens to literary production, which results in a tenfold increase of literary, at least tenfold increase. Now, some authors, like Corinne Toledo, who is an author of detective fiction, wrote 3,000 novels in her career. So some authors, it's not unusual for an author to go from 12 to 1,200 novels, even though this is pre-digital. We're talking about the turn of the 20th century. This is a century ago. So my question was, how is it possible that we went from writing 12 novels per year to writing 1,200 novels per year as a matter of fact? And I started looking at books like these, which offered, now think about how is it possible to go from making one shirt to making 100 shirts? Well, you know that story. The production of goods moves to the factory. We start making, instead of artisanal tailoring kind of craft, we move to industrial production. Exactly the same story happens in the production of intellectual goods. Look at the dates here. 1887, 1895, 1925, 1927, Author Digest. These are the founding moments in these journals. Look at the names of these journals. Author's Digest, Markets and Methods for Writers, Writers Monthly, Writers Review, the author, the writer, the editor. These are journals targeting professional writers. And on the pages of journals, you will find the automation, the technical procedures for writing more, for writing better, for being more literate, for producing not just a novel per 10 years, but for producing a novel every year, for selling, for reaching out to publishers. Now, what kind of techniques are those? They're templates. Just like in the production of other goods, we have templated labor. Here also you have templates. You have books targeted at professional writers with titles such as The Technique of the Novel, Skeleton Essays. Here's a ChatGPT for the 19th century. If you're a student, early 20th century, 19th century, you buy a book of skeleton essays. Instead of writing an essay, you just fill in some blanks, you submit that. That's a way to automate the writing of essays. The technique of drama. Drama, it's law and technique. Note the prevalence of the word technique in these titles. This is the workshop. This is what the minister was talking about as the industrial revolution, but in the world of letters, in the world of literature, in the world of libraries and publication. This is where we find kind of the acceleration of the literary ecosphere. 1928, Robo, the game that writes 1,000,000 story plots. Now, this is a commercially available game. Note its direct resemblance to the Zairaja circles that were mentioned by Ibn Khaldun, centuries earlier. It's a circle within a circle, arranged around a pin, and it can be used to write 1,000,000 story plots. 1928. Various filing. Now, I'm a bit of a nerd. Filing technique is a huge thing in the early 20th century. It's kind of like data science today. Filing techniques, filing cabinets, cross-filing. There's a number of physical devices that allow for authors to collect more information, to cross-reference it, and then to include it in their works. You have devices like the plot genie, the plot robot, 1928, the plot robot. You rotate the circle. It's an actual insert inside of a book. You can see on the right side there, it's a circle that you can rotate. It's sandwiched between two cardboard pieces of paper. And in the window there, you see where there's like the little ball, you have a number, so it generates a number, and then you consult charts. And what you can do with those charts is very quickly come up with like a racy plot for a genre fiction. Detective fiction, romance, sci-fi, that kind of thing. So you consult a detective chart or a sci-fi chart or a romance chart to produce one of those novels. These books were sold widely on the pages of the journals that I just described. The professional journals that are targeting writers, they're selling these kind of devices. Let me give you another example. 1916, Movie Writer by Blanchard. So look at this, it's an actual tablet. It's a physical device. The device contains scrolls. You will rotate little knobs, and you can, in a combinatorial fashion, produce movie plots. So here's a movie plot here. Aged, Aviator, Bribes, A Cannibal, Carousal, and then Escape. This is the plot included in this patent. Once again, these kind of devices were marketed to professional authors on the pages of professional journals. These are the devices of 100 years ago, one of these sort of revolutionary moments in the production of literary goods, Now, you may think, maybe this was a marginal thing. This is kind of, I'm not sure what, I don't read this kind of literature. Well, hold on a second, I will tell you, because this kind of literature is immensely popular to this day. Just as an example, Perry Mason series. Perry Mason, Earl Stanley Gardner, 1933 to 1973. It really became popular in the 60s. Wrote 83 novels in the Perry Mason franchise. 83 novels just in that franchise. Perry Mason also became one of the best-selling television shows, longest-running television shows on American television. And in fact, most of television today that we know and love, including some great television, is written in this fashion. It comes out directly from that lineage of writing fiction, using devices, using plot devices, automating certain parts of the intellectual labor, and presenting it to the public. And this history, now I'm going to pause here, but let me just say that this history that I'm outlining, it's a pre-digital history. This predates the first computer. However, when places like MIT get their first computers, get their first supercomputers in the 1960s, they begin to automate the production of English language sentences, the production of individual sentences, and when they're able to address the production of individual sentences via computerized means, they move quickly to the production of paragraphs, to the production of stories, to the production of books and novels, and science fiction and detective and romance, and in that first generation that clearly sees itself as research in artificial intelligence, they look back to the previous generation of devices I just showed you and begin digitizing and making those tools computerized. And we now enter the modern history of AI proper. We now enter the computerized history of AI, and specifically the kind of AI that involves literary labor and literary production. And this is a moment where literary history, the history of the library, the history of publication connects directly to the history of AI. In conclusion, I hope I have convinced you, maybe a little bit, to hear, when you hear the words AI, you don't just think of like Google and Microsoft, and you think also of Ibn Khaldun, you think about Ramon Lal, you think about you think about our industry, you think about this library as being an integral part of that history. And I also would like to look forward and to say that that history points us to a different future of AI. It also means that the future of AI remains not just a technological capacity, but it remains, yes, it involves artifice, it involves intellect, but it remains a distinctly human future, and it's a future in which the publishing world, the libraries, letters, and literature play an integral part. Thank you.
نشكر الأستاذ دنس يتنن على تواجده ومشاركته. ننتقل الآن إلى مشاركة قيمة من السيدة بارامندر مان، الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة سايمون أند سوتشر المملكة المتحدة والأسواق الدولية، تسلط الضوء من خلالها على فهم المشهد العالمي المتطور في مجال النشر، فلتتفضل مشكورة.
At the right height. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, and my heartfelt thanks to the organisers for inviting me. Whenever I walk into a room full of publishers, I feel an instant sense of belonging. We might come from different parts of the world, we might publish in different languages, but we are all bound by the same belief that stories have the power to change lives. Today, I want to talk about where our industry stands globally, where we're heading, and how we can shape what comes next together. If there's one constant in publishing, it's change. We lived through waves of it: e-books, audiobooks, digital retail, social media, subscription models, and now AI. Each of these shifts have forced us to rethink what we do, how we work, and who we reach. And yet, with every wave of change, new opportunity arrives. That's what I love most about this industry: its resilience, its creativity, and its unwavering belief in the power of storytelling. When I look at publishing today, I see an industry that's no longer defined by borders. Once we worked within clear lines: national markets, linguistic boundaries, territorial rights. Now those lines are blurred. Digital distribution, global platforms, and cross-cultural storytelling have made publishing borderless. A debut author in Lagos can trend in Los Angeles. A Korean webtoon can become a global Netflix phenomenon. A Brazilian children's author can build a readership in Berlin overnight. Over 1.5 billion people worldwide now use or learn English, and millions more engage with translated works every day. This is the single biggest shift of our time: the rise of the truly global reader. Let's look at what that means in real terms. In established markets, the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia, growth remains steady, but it's maturing. Meanwhile, new markets across Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America are accelerating fast. In India, English language publishing alone is worth more than $7 billion and still growing. In China, English and bilingual reading have become aspirational. In the Gulf states, English language books are now cultural status symbols. And here's what's even more remarkable. Over 500 million people are learning English through mobile apps. They're discovering authors and genres that cross borders effortlessly. This is no longer about selling books to these readers, it's about partnering with them, building ecosystems of translation, co-publishing, and cross-market storytelling. So my first call to action to you all is to let's stop thinking of ourselves as separate territories. Let's start thinking of ourselves as one global publishing community, connected by creativity, curiosity, and purpose. But, and this is important, going global doesn't mean losing what makes publishing local. The best publishing will always come from local expertise, from people who understand culture, nuance, humor, rhythm, and voice. Readers in Delhi, Dubai, or Dhaka don't want carbon copies of Western bestsellers. They want stories that speak to their worlds, told in their language, reflecting their lives. The magic happens when global vision and local insight work together. This is how stories travel. This is how communities grow. That's how publishing evolves. At Simon & Schuster, this balance is at the heart of our work, a blend of heritage and innovation, tradition and transformation. We are incredibly proud of our heritage, decades of editorial excellence, long-standing author relationships, and an unwavering commitment to the craft of publishing. But we're also embracing a new chapter, one that's faster, more connected, and more global. We're investing in data, digital transformation, and creative collaboration across markets. We're thinking beyond borders and beyond books. Because publishing today isn't just about producing pages. It's about building storytelling platforms. Print, audio, digital, visual, experimental, every format adds a new way for us all to connect. Our mission is simple: to honor who we are today while boldly shaping who we will be tomorrow. To pair literary excellence with innovation, inclusion, and global reach. Let's talk about digital transformation. Technology has changed how readers discover stories, but the deeper shift is cultural. Readers today want authenticity. They want representation. They want stories that feel true. That's not a trend. That's the new foundation of publishing. Let's take a look at Netflix. By investing in local storytelling, it turned Money Heist, Lupin, and Squid Game into global events. These shows don't succeed in spite of being local. They succeeded because they were local. Publishing can do the same. We can take a story deeply rooted in culture and help it resonate with readers everywhere. And digital platforms are amplifying this. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, they've become the new booksellers of emotion. BookTok alone has transformed reading habits and created communities that span continents. Readers are no longer waiting to be told what to read. They're telling us what matters. So, my second call to action is let's not resist the shift. Let's embrace it. Let's listen to readers. Let's champion diverse voices. And let's see inclusion not as a box to tick, but as a wellspring of creativity and growth. At its heart, publishing has always been about community. It's the connection between author and editor, publisher and reader, story and society. And in an increasingly polarized world, those connections matter more than ever. Books build bridges between people, between perspectives, between cultures. True inclusion isn't just about representation, it's participation. It's giving everyone a voice at the table, even when opinions differ. When we do that, we don't just make better publishing decisions, we build trust, relevance, and resilience. And let's be honest, it also makes business sense. Because when we publish inclusively, we expand our audiences, we open new markets, we future-proof our own companies. Diversity is not a moral good, it's a strategic advantage. Now, let's turn to AI, because you can't give a publishing speech in 2025 without mentioning it. As we've already heard this morning, AI is already here. It's changing how we manage rights, metadata, and production. It helps us forecast, analyze, and automate. Used wisely, it can make us faster, leaner, and more efficient. But let's be clear, as Dennis said, AI will never replace what makes publishing human. It can replicate words, but not meaning. It can mimic style, but not soul. Our role is to ensure AI serves creativity, not the other way around. Used with integrity, it can open doors, helping us test ideas, reach readers, and even tackle sustainability challenges like print forecasting. So, my third call to action to you all is let's lead on this. Let's set the ethical standard of how technology interacts with creativity. Let's prove that innovation and integrity can coexist. At the core of this, from AI to exports to digital transformation, sits one constant: the reader. Readers are the reason we exist. They are not data points. They are partners in the creative process. They tell us what moves them, what matters, what they want more of. When we put readers at the center, we don't lose our publishing edge, we sharpen it, because listening to readers helps us see the world more clearly. It's not about following trends blindly, it's about understanding what readers are reaching for and why. So my fourth call to action: keep readers at the heart of every decision. When we serve their curiosity, their emotion, their need for connection, everything else will follow. So finally, where does this all lead us? I believe the future of publishing rests on three core principles. One, global mindset with local creativity. Two, digital innovation with human purpose. And three, readers at the heart of everything. If we hold on to these things, we will not only adapt to change, we will lead it. We are the custodians of story. We are also the architects of culture. Every book we publish shapes how people see themselves and the world. That's a profound privilege and a responsibility. We have an extraordinary opportunity right now to reshape our industry, to build publishing that's more open, more inclusive, and more connected, to share knowledge across borders, and to make storytelling the bridge that unites rather than divides. The next chapter of publishing won't be written by a single company or market. It will be written by all of us together. And that's the beauty of this moment, because publishing at its best is not about competition, it's about collaboration. So as I close, I want to leave you with this thought. Be bold, be curious, be open. Be bold in how you think about the future. Be curious about new ideas, new technologies, and new voices. And be open to partnership, to learning, to possibility. Because when we combine creativity, inclusivity, and innovation, publishing doesn't just survive, it thrives. We have the tools, the talent, and the shared purpose to make this industry stronger than ever and to ensure that stories continue to inspire, challenge, and connect people all over the world. Thank you.
نشكر السيدة بيرمندرمان على كلمتها. نرحب الآن بالسيد نديم صادق المؤسس والرئيس التنفيذي لشركة شمر AI ليحدثنا من خلال كلمته عن تأثير الذكاء الاصطناعي على الإبداع والنشر، فليتفضل.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this great summit. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me. I'm very privileged to be here and to have your attention. I hope to share some thoughts with you that you find interesting and valuable. And I will introduce a little bit of who I am, not because I'm important, but because my experience and my history colors a lot of what I say. So I qualified first as a psychologist. I have become this is the wrong file, I'm afraid. It's probably too late to change, but this is the one with the wrong formatting. Anyway, I'll explain it to you. The current role that I have is as a CEO of an AI company. So I'm running a technology company. We produce autonomous advertising. It's used by the publishing industry, by more than 200 publishers. And I also am an author, so I've written 2 books, one on how publishing can embrace AI, and the other one more recently, just published a month ago, on how creativity can embrace AI. And they're both the ones that you can see on screen. I'm also the author of children's stories, soon to be published, 10 new books. I write for a number of publishing magazines. I'm a YouTube presenter on motorcycles because I like motorcycles, which has got nothing to do with today. But the point I'm making is that I have experience across the whole breadth of creativity, from running a technology company to writing to managing a music artist to producing videos and so on. And so I try to be sensitive to the whole experience of creation in the creative industries. I want to start with the psychology, though, which is kind of my fundamental layer, I suppose. And one thing that Daniel Kahneman wrote about in his Nobel-winning work was really about how humans have got 2 operating systems. They're commonly called System 1 and System 2. System 1 is how we feel. It's very fast. So you know already whether you think what I'm saying is going to be credible, whether you like me, whether you're feeling comfortable. But mostly we also sit and we listen and we think and we digest information that we're given and we reflect upon it. And that's our System 2, which is the way we think. So we feel very fast and we think actually more slowly than we believe. And the contrast with AI is interesting because AI doesn't feel at all. It's a uniquely human competence and feeling and ability to be able to feel, whereas thinking, and there are different ways of defining that too, is shared with AI. And actually, we're relying more and more, and you're very far ahead in the UAE with this, on the speed of thinking that AI can do for us, so it can get through much more work than we can normally do. So we've always thought of ourselves as a very clever species that can articulate feelings and thoughts in the way that I'm using words and you're listening and deconstructing them now. But actually AI does it so much faster than us. So we have this new partner in the world that is using one of our operating systems better than we've ever seen it used before. And that's been quite alarming for people. I always say at the start of these sorts of talks that I believe that we can work very symbiotically with AI, but I have to appreciate that there has been quite a lot of fear. And that's the third point on this slide, really, that another neuroscientist, a Canadian chap called Steven Pinker, wrote a book about the better angels of our nature, he called it, and it was about the way the world is becoming less violent. It's sometimes hard to believe that, but that was his thesis. And part of it that he talked about was that we all, as people, and the human being as a species, wants to be the apex genome in the world. So whenever anything new approaches us, we look at it defensively, well, how can I protect myself from it? And we look at it offensively, how can I dominate it or at least use it for my benefit? And I think it's been very interesting watching the way the publishing industry, but also the world at large, has reacted to AI with this primal instinct to say, well, are you a threat? Yes, you are. I'm going to defend myself first. Then I'm going to think about offensive strategies where I can incorporate you and make myself stronger by using you. Most species do try to dominate. It is certainly a point of argument as to whether AI has any will or any training or any strategy to dominate us. So I think we have to realize that our fundamental neuropsychology has made us fearful of AI, anxious about it, and actually quite kind of impressed by the way it does one of our fundamental things, which is to think so fast. My own conviction, and I've written about it, particularly in the new book, the blue one, about how creativity can embrace AI, is that it emancipates human intelligence. And I believe that we're going to be getting a lot more new thinking, new spirituality, new philosophies, new artistic expressions as well. And the thing to remember about AI is that it's dynamic. It can work with you, it can grow with you, it can learn with you, but it's inorganic. It has no feelings. So it never experiences things with you. And if you keep that in mind, it becomes a much more comfortable companion. And that is really the way that I see AI. And that was one of the reasons I described the various things that I do at the very start, because my experience has been that the best way that AI works with us is not creating things for us, but working with us. So it helps us to articulate feelings, it excavates from within us notions or concepts that we are trying to kind of germinate and bring to the world. And it's done through dialogue. One of the things that I've noticed is that, for more than 20 years, we've been talking to Google, and the typical interaction with Google is to ask a question and expect an answer. With AI, it's much more subtle. It's much more of a conversation. If you want to really flourish with AI, don't keep asking it questions. Start having conversations with it. Enter into a dialogue. Let it meander, come back. It'll remember everything that it talked to you about before, and it'll keep developing your threads of thought with you. So that is really some of the instruction that I would give to anybody that is trying to adopt AI. It's to think of it not as a tool to command, but as a partner in dialogue, and to remember that it's dynamic yet inorganic. So partners push back, they offer alternatives, they argue with you, they compliment you, they sometimes criticize you. Let AI do that. And you know that in any conversation you have with a chatbot or whatever you want to call your interface, you have the opportunity to tell it how to behave with you. So you can say, be a bit argumentative with me. Please do contradict me. How do you think that a reader will misunderstand what I've written here? Take a different perspective. Employ its ability to be a thoughtful, inquiring companion to you. Perhaps the biggest thought that has occurred to me in writing the new book and really thinking about creativity is the notion of the panthropic. I really hear all the time, I treat AI as my executive assistant or my intern or as my companion or as my friend. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I don't criticize it. But I think it misses the much, much bigger point, which is that at kind of the end of our fingertip, everything within AI is a gathering of things that the world has done before us. So all the expressions of literature, all the thinking in philosophy, all the findings in science, all the art, all the music, everything is there. It's gathered up. And it's all the best of us, and it's also all the worst of us. It's everything. And it's unbelievable, really, I think, that we have this privilege that at the touch of a finger, using a keyboard, we can commune, we can embrace, we can interact with everything and anything. It's really only limited by your imagination to wonder what you might inquire about or to ask for a perspective. So I've coined this new term, which is the panthropic, which tries to describe the whole of humanity and its achievements so far, its accomplishments, all gathered together for us to have a discussion with and to have a dialogue with. Just to put this into perspective a little bit and to kind of bring it down to earth slightly, when I was writing a book, I was thinking about writing a book about a cloud, and I thought, has there been a book about a cloud before, and why do I want to write a book about a cloud? And I looked up, have there been other authors that have written about clouds, and what stories did they tell? And I started talking to the AI, as you can see on screen there. I won't read it all out to you. But the thing that happened in the conversation with the AI about the cloud, because I was trying to kind of convince myself that this is a big enough idea to write a book about, was that it essentially showed me that what I was transfixed by, what I was interested by, was how amorphous, how without shape the cloud was, and how it constantly changed. And if it did have some sort of intellect or soul, how it would feel about this constant change. And eventually it kind of dawned on me that what I was really trying to capture was how in adolescence human beings often feel very insecure and anxious because they can't shape their personalities yet, just like a cloud wandering around the world. Now, I couldn't have had all those thoughts by myself, but AI kind of prompted me and forced me to excavate the feelings that I was having and to deal with them. So I really urge us all to have what I call collaborative creativity, and the definition of that is the practice of transforming novel connections into meaningful realities. And we do it by providing, as human beings, the vision, the taste, the meaning, the purpose, the emotional truth, the cultural context to what you're trying to achieve. And we let AI do the iterations, the insights, the analysis, the pattern recognition, showing us things we're not quite yet seeing. And then together, much more strongly and with real creativity and richness, we develop the vision into an expression that is much broader and deeper than it would have been by either individual. There are a couple of kind of models which you can use as you go through this. There's one that I call the spark, and then the draft, and the polish. So you have the original idea, you kind of express it in whatever way you want to. It's a sort of starter pack in your dialogue with the AI, your starter pack with the panthropic. And then the AI kind of responds, and one of you writes a few words or a few sentences, and that becomes kind of the beginning of the forming of an idea, and then you go away and work on it, and finally you bring it back. When I write my monthly column for the trade magazines, I always put my final column into the AI, and I say, please contradict me, please tell me how a reader will struggle with my argument here. And it always improves what I've written. So it's kind of the spark, the draft, the polish. I think also there's 3 C's that you can get used to if you're trying to be creative with AI. One is context. Always say, the reason that I'm doing this is I want to write a book about motorcycling, and I want to incorporate psychology and the meaning of brands as tribal signals. So, it's quite a big idea, that. And the AI gets what you're trying to achieve, so it starts thinking about what it can draw in or what it can alert you to. Then give it some constraints and say, but I don't want this just to be about sort of brand marketing. I want this to be about tribal values and why it changes per country. And then finally you have a conversation, which is where you iterate through all these things. So those 3 things, context, constraint, and conversation, I would urge on you. There's a very good commentator on AI called Ethan Mollick who writes in the States, and he says that we should embrace the cyborg. We should just become used to AI being our system 2, our clever thinker alongside us, really strengthening our ability to do that. You have to learn to calibrate your trust. You need to see yourself as the master curator in any things that you're creating with AI. And always you need to remember, why are you doing this anyway? What can happen with AI is the whole sort of process runs away from you, and you end up with a whole load of writing in front of you and text and stuff, and you kind of can't really remember why you even started doing it. Just, you've got to be very cautious about that and not be mesmerized by the amount of interaction that you can have. I'm seeing AI used everywhere. In architecture, some of Zaha Hadid's buildings couldn't be built until AI came along and showed the engineers how they could be achieved. In medicine, we've got a 46-day new medicine achieved, which normally would have taken 10 years. Climate science, we're seeing much more coming from space and being analyzed. Whatever your field is, you're going to see that there's new creativity. And again, as you go into this process of using AI for creativity, I would say role play, so ask it to pretend to be a critic or to be a friend, or your mother who doesn't understand what your work is, or whatever it is that you want to do. Do parallel processing, say I'd like 3 different endings to this, or can you think about 2 other characters? Ask it sometimes, what would a structural engineer for a bridge think about my ideas about romance here? And you'll get this kind of peculiar interaction and perspective, which is really helpful. And always start escalating the constraints. Make it tighter and tighter and tighter to what you feel within your heart, within your mind, you really want to achieve. The things to avoid, they're fairly consistent, are an over-reliance. It's again this mesmerizing thing because it writes so fast and writes so well, we tend after a while just to say, yeah, it's great, let it just keep going. And then you kind of copy and paste and you get on with it. That's a dangerous thing to do. And similarly, it's dangerous to be pulled towards the generic. AI is taught to be very modest and conservative and middle of the road and kind of inoffensive as much as it can be. So you start having very boring conversations. And the best way to guard against that is to put as much of yourself into it as possible. Remember that you're the unique property in the conversation. It's just a generic. So the more that you put in of your own specific, eccentric, idiosyncratic ideas, the more successful the conversation will be. Always keep why you're doing it. So just to conclude on this kind of psychological and creativity part, the feeling that we're having, I think, is a sort of almost fearful excitement about what we can achieve. And we have to be careful not to become frozen by fear and instead to embrace it and to start the dialogue today. Remember to bring your own unique voice and create what only you can do. So what about publishing? Well, I think publishing's got, a fork in the road. It's pretty simple. Keep doing what it's always done or embrace the future. And I would, of course, counsel taking the right-hand one there, the proactive approach, establishing best practices, creating inclusive models. I actually think that publishers have always been technology providers to authors and to the creative community. And why wouldn't an AI model from a publisher be another one of those? A publisher can easily fine-tune or specialize any large language model to become specific to their needs, their publishing houses, particular approaches to things. And I believe that that's what will be happening, that there will be investments in specialized large language models from the publishing houses. And what I see across the world, because I'm lucky enough to travel and talk about these sorts of things widely, is very much more confident embrace of AI these days in corporate profitability, efficiencies, warehouse management, those sorts of things where it's obvious that the return on investment is there. It doesn't really change people's jobs very much, but it makes the whole thing more efficient and more profitable. And much more hesitant adoption of AI in pursuing creativity, a bit like I've been talking about today, and that's because it's so unfamiliar. It is truly new to us all. The efficiencies I see are in manuscript qualification, so the slush pile, I hate that term, so unrespectful of authors' hard work, but getting through a whole pile of books with AI that says these ones are this genre, these are those genres, this one's point of difference is that, this one's similar to this thing, so that an editor can look at it and actually fairly evaluate what everything is in front of them. Proofreading, translations and audiobooks. The yellow book that I wrote 2 years ago about publishing embracing AI, it's been translated into 15 languages. 14 of those were done by AI with the local publisher using their editors to polish it for 3 or 4 days at the end. Rights and royalties management, all these sorts of things. And marketing, very much also I'm seeing it embracing AI, writing blurbs, updating metadata, all those sorts of things. The creative emancipations are quite interesting, I think, that are coming along. As I've talked about, AI can be a companion to the creatives. There's a lot of that happening. You can self-edit, you know, having a sort of companion who can critically look at your work and guide you. When I wrote the Blue Book recently, and when I was writing my 10 children's books, I kept interacting with AI, saying, I've had this thought. You know, at one stage I was writing a story about a snake biting a dog, and I just wrote it as if the venom went into the dog and killed it. But I actually wasn't sure about the toxicology of it all, so I asked AI to help me with the authenticity. You know, having somebody always there to help you with the nature of your creativity is fantastic. I'm also seeing some applied AI technologies, like in author avatars. This might feel very peculiar and artificial to people, but I did an experiment with the provider of this technology, an AI company in San Francisco. And I gave it everything I've ever done on LinkedIn, on YouTube, my books, my columns, everything I've ever said, really. And it produced an avatar of me, and you could talk to the author and get a pretty authentic response from me. I tried every question I could, like, what would Nadine think about, how to make an omelette? I mean, bizarre things, and it still really represented me very well. So authors can build their fan clubs, fans can feel like they get closer to their authors. Publishing can be much more interactive in this slightly peculiar but interesting way. And I'm seeing another AI company, an Egyptian one actually, called Sinai, which is developing what I call living books, which is where you can take an ebook, but you can also get it to read to you. You can get it to translate instantly into lots of different languages. You can argue with it, and it argues back with you, so it goes off into being a large language model. You can say, send this paragraph to my friend and tell him that he'll love it or he'll hate it, and so on. It's a very much more interactive form than I've ever seen before. My own company, Shimmer, does a very specific job. As I said, we're working with about 200 publishers, including many of the big five, who have embraced this technology, which is really interesting. But essentially what we do is we take the author's work, the publisher gives it to us, and we read the entire book with AI so that we understand its unique fingerprint, its DNA. That DNA becomes the creative brief for us to generate an advertising campaign with video and music and images and captions. And then that campaign is given to a media deployment engine, also using AI, which shows the ads only to the people who are psychologically matched with what the author's book and intention had originally. So it's a very effective creative machine and a very efficient media machine. And we're seeing something like, I think the figures are on the next page, we're seeing something like 6 times more than the usual efficiency of advertising, more than 12 times people shopping from the advertising than is normal. And this is attributable to the AI. Sure, I mean, we've done some clever stuff to make it work for us, but essentially we have seen AI being able to transform the discoverability and sales of publishers' catalogs. I'll finish by just challenging a little bit by saying, sure, humans made AI, but is it possibly, especially if you think of it as the panthropic, the most creative thing we've ever done? And finally, does it bring us to this place where, if we're humble enough to accept it, that AI might liberate all 8 billion of us to be more expressively creative in the world, which I would certainly welcome. Thank you very much for your time.
نشكر السيد نديم صادق. حضورنا الكريم، ما زلنا مستمرين في فعاليات قمة دبي للمكتبات والنشر، ويسعدنا الآن دعوتكم إلى البهو لحضور الإعلان عن انطلاق مشروع نوعي جديد لمكتبة محمد بن راشد مع سعادة الدكتور محمد المزروعي عضو مجلس إدارة مكتبة محمد بن راشد. نلفت انتباهكم إلى أن القمة تتضمن فعاليات وورش عمل متنوعة في قاعات المكتبة بالأدوار العليا، وللاطلاع على الأجندة ومواعيد الفعاليات يرجى مراجعة الشاشات الإرشادية أو المنشورات المتوفرة في مكتب الاستقبال. نتمنى لكم تجربة ثرية وملهمة.